My name is Lena Carter. But for the first 20 years of my life, it never truly felt like it belonged to me. I grew up in a cramped apartment on the outskirts of Brooklyn, where everything was limited: space, food, and love. My mother, Martha Carter, always called me the useless one. Every time I made a mistake, even something as simple as burning toast, she would drag out the belt and whip me while repeating the same familiar line. "You're nothing but a cursed burden. Raising you is a waste of food and money." I never understood why she hated me so much. I couldn't remember doing anything that terrible. But the beatings, the insults, and her cold, scornful eyes, they became the fabric of my childhood. Then there was my sister, Emily Carter, a world apart from me. Also, Martha's daughter. Yet she wore new dresses every week, took ballet and piano lessons, and was treated like a princess. While I scrubbed the floors, she lounged on the couch eating chocolate-covered strawberries. When I was being beaten, she would just stand there, sometimes even laugh. I asked Martha once, only once, "Why do you love Emily more than me?" She looked at me, said nothing, just smiled. A cold, terrifying smile. When I was 14, I started noticing strange things. One day, while secretly cleaning out Martha's old wardrobe, I found a faded photograph. It was of a newborn wrapped in a red velvet blanket, with gold embroidery that read, "Charlotte Whitmore, 3/12/2005. I'd never heard that name before. I hid the photo in my mattress. That night, using an old phone, I searched Whitmore family on Google. The results exploded. A once mighty financial empire that had shaken Wall Street, then collapsed after the 2005 incident. I didn't understand it all, but my heart pounded, like something inside me was pulling toward a truth I wasn't ready to face. 3 months later, I collapsed while working at a diner. They rushed me to the hospital. During the checkup, the doctor asked, "Do you know your blood type?" "I think I'm O," I replied. He frowned. "No, you're AB." I froze. My mother was type O. The father, I'd been told, abandoned us, also type O. Then how could I be AB? That night, I tore the house apart. I found it, forged birth certificates, altered medical records, and a strand of hair sealed in a plastic bag, scribbled on the paper next to it in messy handwriting. "Real Charlotte, the only proof." I didn't sleep that night because I knew my life had been a lie. I, Lena Carter, was not Martha's daughter. I was Charlotte Whitmore, the stolen child. She had swapped me with her own daughter 20 years ago so that her real child could live a life of silk and silver while I was left to rot in hell. I stared at myself in the mirror. No tears, no trembling. Only one thing remained: vengeance. I stared at the plastic bag with the strand of hair and the scribbled note, "Real Charlotte, the only proof." My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from rage. 20 years. 20 years living a life that wasn't mine. Beaten, humiliated, reduced to a shadow in the very house I was raised in. No, this was never my home. Emily was the one who got to live the life that was meant for me. And I, Charlotte Whitmore, had been stolen, then buried alive under someone else's name. For a whole week, I didn't speak to anyone. I still worked, still cooked, still cleaned like a machine. But inside, my mind was a storm of questions. Who am I really? Are my real parents still alive? Why didn't they find me? What did she do to keep this buried for 20 years? I started watching Martha. She had a routine. She left the house every Tuesday and Friday morning. I trailed her quietly, taking the bus, following at a distance. Eventually, I discovered she often stopped by an old laundromat, then crossed the street to a small cafe where a middle-aged man would be waiting. They didn't act like lovers, but every now and then, they'd exchange yellow envelopes. I snapped photos of everything. Back home, I tore through her drawers again. Buried deep in the bottom of a wooden cabinet, beneath rotting newspaper, I found an old tin box. Inside were aged documents, handwritten letters, and a silver necklace. Etched on the pendant were 2 small letters, CW. I knew instantly. It was mine. But what stole the breath from my chest was an old letter, ink smudged and faded. Dear Charlotte, if you're reading this, it means you found the truth. We never stopped searching for you. Don't trust anyone. Accept your heart. Mom. I collapsed onto the floor and cried. For the first time in years. Not from pain, but from hope. Someone out there still wanted me. I kept it all secret. Neither Emily nor Martha had the slightest clue that I knew. I still played the quiet, obedient daughter, but I watched everything. Emily was now in college. Expensive tuition, endless spending. But one night, I overheard a phone call between Martha and someone I didn't recognize. I can't send more money. She's burning through it like crazy. If she ever finds out the truth, it's over. She was me. She was afraid. That was the first crack in their armor, and I wasn't going to waste it. A week later, I launched my first move. I broke into Emily's email. Years ago, we shared the same home Wi-Fi, and she used my old phone. That gave me just enough access. What I found made my blood boil. Bills, party photos, but more than that, records. She had used my name to enroll in early programs, used my social security number, my identity. She had been living as me, legally, and I had no idea. I printed everything, compiled it into a leather-bound notebook, a weapon I would use when the time came. Then I started reaching out. I anonymously contacted missing person organizations, sent in the old photo, the DNA kit I ordered online, and pictures of the silver CW necklace. 3 weeks later, I received a reply. We believe you may be connected to the Charlotte Whitmore disappearance case from 2005. Please contact us urgently. I didn't respond immediately. I had to plan. Because I knew if Martha even suspected I was looking into my past, she would do anything to stop me. And I also knew when I came back, I wouldn't come back alone. That night, Emily returned home in a glittering gown. She had just been to her boyfriend's birthday party, someone from a wealthy family. I sat across the room, watching her toss her heels onto the couch and laugh. I remembered the time I got beaten for asking for a textbook. Now she was sipping champagne with Manhattan's elite. She looked over at me and sneered. You should be grateful to live with me, Lena. Without us, you'd probably be sleeping under a bridge. I stared back at her and smiled. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Because soon, everything she had, her life, her love, her legacy, would be mine, the way it always should have been. I decided to take the first step. After weeks of hesitation, I responded to the missing persons organization. In the message, I only said I needed to verify something critical about my identity and asked them to keep everything confidential. 3 hours later, they called back. The voice on the line belonged to a middle-aged woman, trembling with emotion. "This is Evelyn Griggs. I was the personal assistant to the Whitmore family." I said nothing. I just listened. "Charlotte, if you really are Charlotte, then Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore never stopped looking for you. They offered $1,000,000 rewards, hired private investigators, but after 10 years, she paused. "We never found a body? No proof you died. And I never believed you were gone." I swallowed hard. My voice was calm, but my mind was spinning. "I'm not sure who I am, but I need answers." 3 days later, I met Evelyn at a small law office in the West District. She brought a thick file with her. Charlotte's birth certificate, hospital records from 2005, and several family photos. My heart clenched when I saw their faces. A woman with eyes just like mine, and a man with a soft, sorrowful smile. I knew. I belonged there. "This is your necklace," Evelyn said, placing a silver CW pendant next to mine. Identical. I told her everything: the abuse, the old photo, the blood type mismatch, the forged documents. Evelyn didn't speak much. She simply held my hand. "We'll bring you back, but we must be careful. You have no idea what she's done to cover this up." Oh, I knew. And I had no intention of returning as a victim. I was going back as her worst nightmare. Back home, I sank deeper into my role. I didn't want Martha or Emily to suspect anything. So I smiled more, acted more polite, cooked Emily's favorite dishes, and like any spoiled brat, she started lowering her guard. One night, after Emily had fallen asleep, I snuck into her room. There I found a second phone, not for calling, but for storing private pictures. It was full of explicit photos with multiple men, not just her current boyfriend. I sent the entire album to a hidden email account. A few of them I planned to gift at the right moment. Next, I looked into her boyfriend, William Easton, the second son of a powerful banking family. Polished, smart, reserved. I orchestrated a chance meeting at a community event hosted by his university. Emily couldn't attend, too busy getting her nails done. I volunteered at the event and deliberately bumped into William, dropping a folder in the process. As he bent down to help, I looked straight into his eyes. "Thank you. I'm Lena Carter." He nodded, slightly puzzled. The last name Carter probably triggered something in his mind. "Oh, Emily's sister?" I smiled slightly. "Not exactly. Just live under the same roof." Technically not a lie. We talked briefly, just enough for me to notice. William seemed like a decent man, and likely had no idea who Emily really was. Or rather, the life she was pretending was hers. My life. That night, I sent William an anonymous email. It was short but loaded. "Your girlfriend is not who you think she is. She has a secret, and a name that isn't hers. Don't let her fool you." I attached one of the photos, Emily entangled with another man. The next morning, Emily went berserk. She banged on my door, screaming, "What did you do? You hacked my phone, didn't you? You psycho freak." I calmly stood up with a cup of tea in hand. "What are you talking about? I'm just the maid here, remember? Why would I touch your stuff?" She fell silent, but her eyes were wild, Real fear. Martha rushed in, yanking Emily into her room. I pressed my ear to the door. You need to be more careful. That girl's not the same anymore. She's not stupid like before. I smiled. Exactly. I wasn't stupid anymore. 2 days later, I received the DNA test results from Evelyn's team. No doubt about it, I was Charlotte Whitmore. I could go public. I could reclaim everything with one press conference. But I didn't just want my name back. I wanted them to pay. Emily, for living my life and stomping on it. Martha, for stealing me and turning me into a caged animal. I called Evelyn. This time, my voice was steady. I'm coming back, but not to reunite. I'm coming back to end this. 3 days after receiving the DNA test results, I stood in the private office of the Whitmore family's legal advisor. Evelyn sat beside me, her hands shaking, but her eyes burning with belief. Across the table, Mr. Raymond Park, family attorney for over 30 years, held the documents in his hands. When he looked up, his voice was steady but firm. There's no doubt. Miss Charlotte Whitmore is sitting right in front of us. I had been waiting for this moment all my life, but I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I only asked one question. How much of the inheritance does the girl living in my place receive? Raymond paused. Charlotte, Emily, is legally adopted by Martha Carter. The Whitmore family's estate was frozen until proof of your survival. If you want to reclaim your position, we'll have to act carefully. No need to go public yet, I said. I want to handle this in my own way. Raymond looked at Evelyn, then back at me. All right, but just so you know, you're not alone. The real family is ready to welcome you back whenever you say the word. I didn't answer, because the real family, they weren't the ones I was focused on right now. That evening, I returned to the Carter household. Emily didn't notice anything. Still busy scrolling her phone, cursing some guy who had ghosted her. Martha, though, had grown nervous. She was watching me more often, whispering on the phone late at night. I suspected she felt the wind changing. She should. I let her feel safe for now. The storm was coming. But I wanted her to enjoy the sunshine before it hit. The next step, erase Emily's last source of pride, her boyfriend, William Easton. I sent William a second anonymous message. The girl you're dating is not just unfaithful. She's living under a stolen name. Ask her about the Whitmore family. Ask her if she was ever in an orphanage. I attached a childhood photo of the real Charlotte me, holding the same necklace Emily now wore. 2 days later, Emily came home drunk. Her mascara smeared, her eyes red. She threw her bag at the wall and screamed, "He dumped me! That coward dumped me! After all I did for him!" Martha ran to comfort her. I stayed silent, sipping tea in the kitchen. Emily turned to me like a rabid dog. "You! It was you! You're behind this, you little worm!" I calmly met her gaze. Why would William dump you over a stranger's photo? Unless that photo wasn't of a stranger. She froze. For a second, the mask cracked. She backed off, pulled Martha into her room, and slammed the door. But not before I saw her lips tremble. That was the first time Emily was truly afraid of me. 3 days later, Evelyn arranged for me to quietly meet Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore. It was in the back room of a high-security private hospital. No media, no announcement, just 2 grieving parents sitting silently. staring at me as if afraid I would vanish again. Mrs. Whitmore was the first to stand up. "Charlotte, I know this is too sudden, but if it's really you?" I pulled the necklace from my pocket, the real one, not the one Emily wore. "This is mine, and so is the scar behind my left ear," she cried. Not the dramatic kind, the broken, breathless kind that no acting can fake. Mr. Whitmore approached, tears in his eyes, but he didn't hug me. He looked me straight in the face. "Do you want your place back, all of it?" I nodded. "But not yet. I want them to know what it's like to live in fear." He smiled faintly. "Then you're my daughter, all right." I returned to the Carter house like nothing had changed. But everything had. Now I had legal backup. I had resources. I had allies. All I needed was to push them to the edge and make them jump. I started leaking anonymous rumors online. Nothing traceable, just whispers. Emily Carter isn't who she says she is. Rumors say she was adopted, and the real heiress is coming back. Someone is digging into the Carter family's past. Within a week, the local gossip blogs exploded. Emily was humiliated in public, questioned by friends, even dropped by a brand she was modeling for. She spiraled. Martha tried to clean up, but she was clearly losing her grip. One night, I heard them arguing. "You told me everything was fine." "It was, until she changed. She's not the same stupid girl anymore." I smiled from the hallway. Exactly. One day, Emily came to me, desperate. For the first time in years, she spoke without sarcasm. "Lena, do you know anything about who I really am?" I looked at her. A part of me wanted to scream the truth in her face, but not yet. "I don't know. But maybe you should ask your mother." That night, she did. And for the first time, I saw Martha slap Emily across the face. The empire was starting to crumble. Emily stared at me with her eyes wide open. I smiled, gently setting the cup of tea down in front of her. "Drink it. I made it just the way you like." Emily didn't touch the cup. Her voice was cautious. What are you trying to do, Lena? Why are you being so weird lately?" I leaned in, my tone light like a lullaby. "Nothing. Just trying to take care of my sister. That's what family is for, right?" She still didn't drink. She was starting to notice. Good. The fear had started to set in, and that meant she was beginning to lose control. Earlier that week, I had secretly planted sleeping pills into her vitamins. Small doses. Just enough to make her feel groggy, paranoid, and off balance. She started arriving late to class, missing deadlines, even accused her roommate of stealing. Everything was falling into place. At home, Martha's health had begun to fail, but strangely, she didn't go to the hospital. She insisted on staying home, refusing doctors. I suspected something deeper, something hidden. So one night I followed her into the attic. There, buried under piles of old boxes, I found a rusted metal safe. Inside, a birth certificate with my real name, Charlotte Whitmore. A stained baby blanket embroidered with CW. And a thick envelope filled with letters. Dozens of letters never sent. All addressed to Charlotte. Some written by my real parents, some by Martha herself. One stood out. "Forgive me, Charlotte. I didn't plan to keep you this long. It was supposed to be temporary. But you were too good, too perfect. And my Emily, she was never enough." I stood there frozen. Even Martha had once felt guilt. But now, It was too late for remorse. Emily's downfall began with the scholarship. The school had started investigating irregularities in her financial records because, of course, I had anonymously submitted the proof, the documents showing how Emily had used my identity for years. One afternoon, she came home in a panic. They're saying my scholarship might be revoked, some kind of identity fraud. I don't know what's going on. I looked at her with the calmest face I had ever worn. I'm sure it's just a mistake. Maybe someone's pretending to be you. You know, like how people steal lives these days. She stared at me, jaw tight. I could almost see the math running in her head. She knew. She just didn't have the proof. Yet. But I wasn't done. Next, I leaked photos of her parties. The drugs, the pills, the men. Some ended up on a private school forum. Others reached her boyfriend's mother. Within a week, she was uninvited to a major family event. Within 2, her boyfriend stopped replying to her messages. Emily screamed at me that night, crying, yelling, smashing a vase. You jealous little bitch! You've always hated me, always tried to ruin my life. And I just stood there, smiling, because this wasn't revenge. This was balance. Then came the final nail. I mailed 1 letter, just 1, to a lawyer. Inside, I enclosed the DNA report, the original birth certificate, and the letters. I signed it anonymously. Please help the real Charlotte Whitmore. Her life was stolen, and now it's time to return it. I didn't expect things to move fast, but they did. 2 weeks later, the Whitmore family's private attorney came knocking on our door. Emily was at school. Martha was resting in her room. I opened the door and let him in. He didn't say a word, just looked at me, then handed me an envelope. You're not Lena Carter, are you? No, I replied softly. I'm Charlotte. What happened next felt like a storm I'd waited my whole life for. Emily was called in for questioning. Martha, too. The authorities didn't arrest them, not yet, but everything changed. Martha suddenly left the city. No note, no goodbye, just vanished. Emily? She dropped out of school. Her name was all over the news. Heir to a fortune accused of identity theft. The Whitmore family refused to speak to her. She was now an outsider. Exactly what she made me feel for 2 decades. One evening, I returned to the house, alone. It was quiet, empty. My old room untouched. The broken floorboards still loose. I walked in, sat down at the small desk, and pulled out a notebook. Inside it, I wrote, My name is Charlotte Whitmore. This house was once my prison, but I survived. I outlived the lies. And now it's my turn to choose what kind of woman I will be. I closed the notebook. Tomorrow I would face the Whitmores, my real family, for the first time. But tonight I sat in the stillness of a life I reclaimed, not out of revenge, but because I had finally remembered who I was. I stood in front of the Whitmore mansion for the first time. No one answered the door, but I knew they were watching through the camera. The gate slid open after a few minutes. A woman in her 50s, heavily made up, said coldly, Are you Charlotte? I nodded. Follow me. Mr. Whitmore is expecting you. The grand living room was silent as a tomb. Mr. Whitmore, my biological father, sat in the center of the room, his eyes heavy. No hugs, no tears, only a question. What do you want from us? I answered slowly. I don't want money. I don't need a name. I just want to know why. Why did my real parents allow their daughter to be swapped and remain silent for 20 years? The air tightened. Mrs. Whitmore, sitting next to him, trembled. We didn't know. Martha told us the baby had died at birth. She was my private nurse. I was too weak to check. Her voice faded. We held a funeral for a child? That wasn't even ours. My fists clenched. Martha. Again, everything led back to her. After the meeting, I left the mansion in silence. But then I received a message from the Whitmore family's attorney that made my heart jolt. Martha Carter has been arrested at a gas station near the border. In her car were 3 suitcases of cash and an unused firearm. I wasn't surprised, but I needed to face her one last time. In the interrogation room, Martha looked nothing like before. Her hair disheveled, eyes sunken, body gaunt. She didn't look at me, just gave a raspy laugh. Good girl. I should have left you at the church like I originally planned. I sat down staring into her eyes. Why didn't you? Because you realized I could replace your real daughter? Or because I was easier to control? Martha chuckled. Both. Emily was weak, sickly from birth. I needed a perfect replica to win scholarships, affection, social standing, and you were smart, quiet, obedient, exactly what I needed. I didn't feel pain, only a wave of disgust washing over me. You never loved anyone, not Emily, not me. She paused, then said, Love is for the weak. I chose power. The next day, the media exploded. Martha was charged with infant abduction, identity fraud, and psychological abuse. Emily was under investigation for complicity, though she insisted she knew nothing. But then something even more unexpected happened. A man named David Black appeared, claiming to be Emily's biological father, armed with DNA results. I had a relationship with Martha before she got married. Emily is my daughter, but I never knew she used Emily to switch places with the Whitmore's child. The story spiraled into madness. Both girls were victims, but only one chose the path of revenge. I didn't go to court on the day Martha was sentenced. I didn't need to hear the verdict. I'd already carried out my own. And Emily? She vanished from public view after the scandal. But one afternoon, I received an email from an unknown address. No subject line, no greeting, just one sentence. You won, but you'll never get back the childhood that was stolen. I didn't reply, not because I thought she was wrong, but because I understood. She lost something too, but unlike me, she chose denial. I chose to confront. In the following months, the Whitmores invited me to move in, to officially take the family name, to inherit part of their fortune. I declined. I didn't need anyone to validate my existence. I rented a small apartment, returned to school, and began working at a legal aid center for abused children. Every day, I met kids who had lived what I had. Silence, pain, and the fear of not being believed. I listened to them, the way I once wished someone had listened to me. 1 year later, I received a postcard from Spain. No name, but I knew who it was from. A picture of the sea with a single line written, I finally learned how to swim. Hope you've learned how to breathe through life's ocean too. I smiled. For the first time, truly smiled. I sat down to write the final page of the journal I'd started the day I learned my real name. My name is Charlotte Whitmore. I was once a shadow, a stolen child, a girl who lived a life that didn't belong to her. But now I am myself, and no one can take that away from me. I closed the journal and stood up. The sun wasn't particularly bright today, but I knew I was alive. And finally, I was me. 1 year after the trial, my life had settled into a strange calm. No more sleepless nights, no more nightmares of Martha's screams, or the sting of her midnight slaps. I lived in a modest apartment in Brooklyn, working at a legal support center for abused minors, children who had once been like me. I thought I had closed the past, until a letter arrived. No postmark, no return address, just a gray envelope with one line. "Charlotte, return what isn't yours." At first I thought it was Emily, but the handwriting was different. I ignored it. Until someone broke into my apartment. Nothing was stolen, except for my journal, the one I had been writing for 2 years, the one that documented my entire plan to expose Martha and reclaim my true identity. I understood then. Someone still wasn't done with me. A week later, I received a call from Mr. Whitmore. His voice was low. "Someone just filed a lawsuit, claiming that you conspired with Martha years ago to steal Emily's identity." I froze. "Who?" I asked. "A woman named Valerie Sinclair. She claims she's your biological mother." My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. Valerie appeared like a storm, younger than her age, impeccably made up with a calculating smile. She presented a new DNA test, claiming I was not the biological daughter of the Whitmores nor of Martha. My world crumbled. I had 3 independent tests done at separate clinics. Each confirmed I was not biologically related to anyone from the story I had lived for 25 years. The truth began to surface like dust brushed off an old box. On the day I was born at St. Mercy Hospital, 2 other baby girls were delivered at the same hour with similar weights and health stats. Due to a mix-up in identification tags, the infants were accidentally switched at birth. Martha, who was only a temporary nurse that day, discovered this, and she exploited it. She hadn't swapped Emily with me. I was never the stolen daughter of the wealthy family. I was just the 3rd baby, caught in a game I never chose. Valerie, the woman who claimed to be my real mother, had never searched for me, not once in over 2 decades. She only resurfaced when the Whitmore family scandal made headlines, when my name became valuable. She wanted to use my newfound identity to demand compensation from both families, a legal scheme. I refused. She grew furious, threatened a lawsuit. I said nothing. I didn't need the truth from someone who only saw me as leverage. A few weeks later, I visited Martha's grave. I didn't cry. I simply stood in front of the cold stone, bearing the name of the woman who once claimed to be my mother. She was cruel, manipulative, greedy. But on some twisted level, she was the only one who had ever physically raised me. I forgive you, but I'll never forget. My life had been split into 3 jagged pieces. One belonged to the Whitmores, who had unknowingly lost their real daughter. One belonged to Martha, who raised me in lies and abuse. And the last, to a woman named Valerie, whom I never knew and never needed. But among these broken pieces, I was the one who chose how to put them back together. One night, during my shift, a young girl was brought in. Her face was bruised, her lips dry and cracked, her eyes distant like she had long accepted pain. Her name was Isla, 11 years old, orphaned, then abused by her adoptive family. As I sat beside her, she looked at me and asked, "Have you ever felt like you didn't belong anywhere?" I smiled, slowly, gently. I did, but then I built a place of my own, and once I did, no one could take it from me again. Isla looked at me for a moment, then smiled back, for the first time. I lost my identity, my family, even the certainty of my origins. But I found my reason to exist, not through bloodlines or names, but through the choice to live kindly in a world that had once been anything but kind to me. I am Charlotte, or maybe someone else. The name no longer matters, because in the end I escaped the lies, and I survived.